12. Strange signs your body is burning fat, not sugar. I want to start today with something that happens in my office more often than you might think. A patient comes in, someone who has been working hard for weeks, eating carefully, cutting back on carbohydrates, trying to lose weight or manage their blood sugar, and they are frustrated. Not because nothing is happening, but because they cannot tell if anything is happening. The scale is barely moving, their clothes feel about the same, and they are starting to wonder whether all this effort is actually making any difference at all inside their body. And what I tell them every single time is this: the scale is one of the least reliable ways to know whether your body is actually burning fat. Because fat loss is not a simple linear process that announces itself loudly and clearly. It is a complex internal metabolic shift, a fundamental change in how your body is generating energy. And it produces signals that are subtle, strange, and almost universally misunderstood. Signals that most people either ignore completely or actively worry about because they do not know what they mean. Today I'm going to change that. My name is Dr. Sienna Black. I am an internal medicine physician with over 15 years of clinical experience. And today I am going to walk you through 12 signs, some of them quite surprising, that your body is actively burning fat rather than sugar for fuel. I am going to explain exactly why each sign occurs at the physiological level. And I am going to tell you how to manage the transition symptoms that sometimes accompany this metabolic shift so that you can move through them comfortably rather than being derailed by them. This is one of the most practically useful videos I have made on this channel. Please stay with me until the end. Before I get into the 12 signs, I need to make sure you understand the fundamental metabolic switch we are talking about, because everything else in this video makes much more sense once you understand the underlying physiology. Your body has two primary fuel sources. The first and preferred fuel in the typical modern American diet is glucose, blood sugar, derived primarily from carbohydrates. When you eat carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks them down into glucose, insulin is released, and that glucose is burned for energy or stored as glycogen in the liver and muscles. The second fuel source is fat, specifically the triglycerides stored in your fat cells throughout your body. Under normal circumstances with a typical high carbohydrate diet, your body rarely needs to tap into fat stores in a meaningful way because glucose is always available. But when carbohydrate intake is reduced, whether through intentional dietary changes, intermittent fasting, caloric restriction, or simply extended periods without eating, something remarkable begins to happen. Insulin levels drop. The enzyme lipase becomes activated in fat cells. Triglycerides are broken down into fatty acids and glycerol and released into the bloodstream. The liver takes up these fatty acids and converts them into molecules called ketone bodies, specifically acetoacetate, beta-hydroxybutyrate, and acetone. These ketones become the primary fuel source for the brain, the heart, the muscles, and virtually every organ in the body. This is the state of fat adaptation, or in its more intensive form, nutritional ketosis. And it produces a specific constellation of physiological changes throughout the body that generate the 12 signs I am about to describe. Some of these signs feel wonderful. Some of them feel strange and initially uncomfortable. All of them are meaningful, and all of them are worth knowing. Sign number 1 is a metallic or unusual taste in the mouth, and this is one of the most commonly reported early signs of fat burning that almost nobody recognizes for what it is. When your liver produces ketone bodies, one of them, acetone, is volatile. It evaporates from the blood into the lungs and is exhaled with every breath. It also appears in saliva, and acetone has a distinctive chemical taste and smell that many people describe as metallic, fruity, slightly sweet, or reminiscent of nail polish remover. If you have recently changed your diet, started fasting, or significantly reduced your carbohydrate intake, and you notice an unusual taste in your mouth that was not there before, this is almost certainly acetone from fat metabolism. It is not a dental problem. It is not a sign that something is wrong. It is your body literally exhaling the byproduct of fat being burned for fuel. The intensity of this taste and smell varies between individuals depending on how efficiently they are producing and utilizing ketones. Some people notice it strongly, others barely at all. It typically becomes less prominent after the first few weeks of fat adaptation as the body becomes more efficient at utilizing ketones and exhaling less acetone. Staying well hydrated and maintaining good oral hygiene can help manage the intensity. Sign number 2 is waking up around 3 in the morning, and this one surprises people because they do not typically associate nighttime waking with fat burning. Here is what is happening. When your body is in fat-burning mode, your liver is actively producing glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, a process called gluconeogenesis, to maintain blood sugar levels overnight. This process is most active in the early morning hours when cortisol begins its natural rise. The hormonal changes associated with this, including the cortisol release and the mild activation of the sympathetic nervous system, can produce a brief period of lighter sleep or waking around 2 to 4 in the morning. Additionally, when fat adaptation is still in its early stages and the brain has not yet fully optimized its use of ketones for fuel, it may briefly signal low energy availability during the overnight fast, which can also contribute to early morning waking. This sign is most common in the first 1 to 3 weeks of a significant dietary change toward fat burning, and typically resolves as the body becomes more fully fat adapted. Managing it involves ensuring adequate electrolyte intake, particularly sodium, potassium, and magnesium, which become more critical when insulin levels are low and the kidneys are excreting more electrolytes than usual. A small amount of sea salt in water before bed or a magnesium supplement taken in the evening can significantly reduce this nighttime waking for many people. Sign number 3 is skin changes, and specifically a temporary period of skin changes that can include mild breakouts, increased oiliness in some areas, or in some people, a brief improvement in skin clarity. The skin changes associated with fat adaptation occur because the shift away from high carbohydrate eating reduces the insulin spikes that drive sebum production and skin inflammation. Lower insulin levels mean less androgenic stimulation of sebaceous glands, which is why many people who reduce carbohydrates see meaningful improvements in acne and skin oiliness over time. However, in the early transition period, the mobilization of fat stores can temporarily release toxins and compounds that were stored in fat tissue, and hormonal fluctuations during the metabolic transition can produce temporary skin changes. For most people, the skin changes of fat adaptation resolve within 2 to 4 weeks and are followed by a sustained improvement in skin clarity and texture that reflects the systemic reduction in insulin-driven inflammation. Supporting the liver, which is central to processing the fatty acids being mobilized, with adequate hydration, cruciferous vegetables, and reduced alcohol intake during this transition period can help minimize skin changes. Sign number 4 is feeling colder than usual, particularly in the hands and feet, and this is one that worries people because coldness can be a sign of various medical conditions. But in the context of a recent dietary change toward fat burning, it has a specific and benign explanation. When your body shifts from burning glucose to burning fat, its heat production patterns change. Glucose metabolism is relatively inefficient thermodynamically. It produces a significant amount of heat as a byproduct. Fat metabolism is more efficient. It produces less waste heat. The result is that the body may run slightly cooler during the transition period. Additionally, when insulin levels drop, the kidneys excrete more sodium and water. This can reduce blood volume slightly and reduce peripheral blood flow to the extremities, contributing to cold hands and feet. This is almost always temporary and resolves as full fat adaptation occurs and the body recalibrates its heat production to the new fuel source. Ensuring adequate sodium intake, which most people actually underconsume during low carbohydrate eating, can help restore normal blood volume and peripheral circulation. If persistent cold intolerance continues beyond the first few weeks, it is worth checking thyroid function, as thyroid conditions can also produce this symptom. Sign number 5 is muscle twitching or involuntary muscle movements. Small, random twitches that you might notice in your calves, your thighs, your arms, or even your eyelids. These are almost always related to electrolyte shifts, specifically the changes in sodium, potassium, and magnesium balance that accompany the transition to fat burning. When insulin levels drop, the kidneys shift into a mode of greater electrolyte excretion because insulin normally signals the kidneys to retain sodium and, by extension, potassium and other minerals. The sudden drop in insulin that accompanies reduced carbohydrate intake can therefore lead to meaningful electrolyte losses in the first week or two of fat adaptation. Magnesium deficiency is particularly likely to produce muscle twitching, cramping, and restlessness. And magnesium is already one of the most common deficiencies in adults over 60, even without dietary changes. The solution is deliberate electrolyte replacement during the transition period. Salting food generously with sea salt or pink Himalayan salt. Eating potassium-rich foods like avocados, leafy greens, and nuts. Taking a magnesium glycinate supplement, which is better absorbed and gentler on the digestive system than other forms of magnesium. Most muscle twitching associated with fat adaptation resolves completely within 1 to 3 weeks once electrolyte balance is restored. Sign number 6 is sudden and dramatic mental clarity. And this is one of the most consistently reported and most pleasantly surprising signs of fat adaptation. Many people who have been burning primarily glucose for their entire lives describe the experience of shifting to fat burning as feeling like a fog has been lifted from their brain. Thoughts come faster and more clearly. Focus improves dramatically. The post-meal cognitive slump, that familiar mental fog that descends an hour or two after a high-carbohydrate meal, simply stops happening. And many people describe a sense of sustained, even mental energy throughout the day that they have never experienced before. This happens because ketones, the fuel produced during fat burning, are extraordinarily efficient fuel for the brain. Unlike glucose, which produces blood sugar spikes and crashes that create cognitive volatility, ketones provide the brain with a stable, consistent energy source that does not fluctuate with meal timing. The brain actually appears to prefer ketones under many circumstances. Several researchers have described ketones as a superfuel for neurological function. Additionally, the reduction in chronic blood sugar spikes and the systemic anti-inflammatory effects of lower insulin levels improve brain function in ways that build over weeks and months of fat adaptation. If you experience a period of increased mental clarity, improved focus, and sustained cognitive energy following dietary changes that promote fat burning, this is your brain thanking you for the fuel upgrade. Sign number 7 is a change in your breath. Specifically a breath that smells fruity, slightly sweet, or chemical in a way that is different from ordinary bad breath. This is closely related to sign number 1, the metallic taste, and has the same cause. Acetone is exhaled through the lungs in meaningful quantities during active fat burning, and it gives the breath a distinctive odor. Unlike bad breath caused by poor dental hygiene or digestive issues, ketone breath is not responsive to brushing or mouthwash in any lasting way because it originates from the lungs, not the mouth. Staying hydrated, chewing parsley or mint, and using sugar-free breath fresheners can temporarily mask it, but the only thing that reduces it significantly over time is full fat adaptation. When the body becomes more efficient at utilizing ketones for fuel rather than exhaling them. For most people, this breath change is mild and resolves within 3 to 6 weeks. Sign number 8 is reduced hunger and fewer food cravings, particularly for sweets and processed carbohydrates. This is one of the most significant and welcome signs of fat adaptation, and it occurs because of fundamental changes in the hunger hormones. When you are burning primarily glucose, your blood sugar fluctuates with every meal, spiking after eating and dropping 2 to 3 hours later, triggering hunger signals and cravings for more carbohydrates to bring blood sugar back up. When you are burning fat, the fuel supply is stable and sustained. Your body is continuously accessing its fat stores for energy, regardless of when your last meal was. The hunger hormone ghrelin, which drives appetite, is suppressed during fat burning. The satiety hormone leptin becomes more effective, and cravings for sugar and refined carbohydrates, which are driven largely by blood sugar volatility, simply diminish and in many cases disappear entirely. People in a fat-adapted state often naturally eat less frequently and feel satisfied with smaller amounts of food, not through willpower or restriction, but because their body's hunger signaling has fundamentally changed. Sign number 9 is increased and more sustained physical energy. In the early stages of fat adaptation and the first 1 to 2 weeks, many people actually feel worse physically. Lower energy, weakness, difficulty with exercise, what some people in the low carbohydrate community call the keto flu. This happens because the muscles are still primarily trained to burn glucose and have not yet developed the enzymatic machinery to efficiently utilize fat. But once fat adaptation is complete, typically after 3 to 6 weeks of consistent fat-burning dietary patterns, physical energy often improves dramatically and sustainably. Fat stores provide an essentially unlimited fuel source compared to glycogen stores, which are depleted within 90 minutes of intense exercise. Fat-adapted individuals can sustain physical activity for much longer without hitting an energy wall. They also typically experience more consistent energy throughout the day, without the mid-afternoon energy crashes that characterize glucose-dependent metabolism. Sign number 10 is changes in your digestion, specifically a change in bowel habits that often includes either constipation in the early transition period or a change in stool consistency and frequency. The digestive changes of fat adaptation occur because the gut microbiome, the community of bacteria in your intestines, begins to shift in response to the change in dietary substrates. A lower carbohydrate diet reduces the food supply for many bacteria that ferment carbohydrates and produce gas, which is why many people report reduced bloating during fat adaptation. However, fiber intake can also decrease when carbohydrates are reduced, which can slow transit time and cause constipation in some people. Supporting gut health during fat adaptation involves maintaining adequate fiber intake from non-starchy vegetables and nuts, staying well hydrated, and considering a quality probiotic supplement to support the beneficial bacteria during the microbiome transition. Sign number 11 is changes in your urine, specifically urine that is more frequent, lighter in color, and in the early stages of fat adaptation may have a slightly unusual smell. The increased urination occurs for the same reason as the electrolyte losses. Insulin drop causes the kidneys to excrete more fluid. In the first week of fat adaptation, many people lose several pounds of water weight as glycogen stores are depleted. Each gram of glycogen holds approximately 3 to 4 grams of water, so depleting glycogen stores releases substantial fluid. This is one of the reasons the scale drops quickly in the first week of a low carbohydrate diet, and then slows dramatically as actual fat loss proceeds at its more modest pace. The unusual smell in urine during early fat adaptation is again acetone. Ketones are excreted in the urine as well as exhaled through the lungs. Sign number 12 is improved sleep quality, specifically a deeper, more restorative sleep that many people notice after several weeks of fat adaptation. This improvement occurs for several interconnected reasons. Lower blood sugar volatility overnight means fewer cortisol spikes to manage blood sugar dips during sleep. The anti-inflammatory effects of reduced insulin and reduced carbohydrate intake improve the brain's sleep architecture over time. And the stable energy availability from fat burning means the brain does not experience the energy fluctuations during sleep that can contribute to fragmented, unrestorative sleep patterns. So there are your 12 signs. A metallic or unusual taste in the mouth, waking around 3 in the morning in early adaptation, temporary skin changes, feeling colder than usual, muscle twitching from electrolyte shifts, sudden dramatic mental clarity, fruity or chemical breath, reduced hunger and food cravings, more sustained physical energy, digestive changes, changes in urine frequency and smell, and improved sleep quality after full adaptation. Not every person will experience all 12 of these signs. Individual variation in how people respond to the metabolic shift is significant. But if you are making dietary changes designed to promote fat burning, whether through reduced carbohydrates, intermittent fasting, or caloric restriction, and you recognize several of these signs in your own experience, you can take genuine confidence from them. They are not problems to be solved. They are evidence that your metabolism is doing exactly what you are asking it to do. I want to close by talking about how to support your liver and gut through this transition, because both organs play central roles in fat metabolism, and supporting them can make the difference between a smooth transition and a difficult one. Your liver is the primary site of ketone production. It is the organ that takes fatty acids released from fat cells and converts them into the ketones your body runs on. Supporting your liver during fat adaptation means staying well hydrated, reducing alcohol completely if possible, eating cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts, which support liver detoxification enzymes, and avoiding unnecessary medication burden. Your gut microbiome shapes how efficiently you absorb and utilize nutrients during fat adaptation. Supporting it with adequate fiber from vegetables, fermented foods like plain yogurt and sauerkraut, and a quality probiotic supplement helps maintain the microbial diversity that supports metabolic health. I am Dr. Sienna Black. Thank you for watching Healthy After 60. Please share this video with someone who is working on their metabolic health and needs to know what these signs mean. Hit the like button if this was helpful. Subscribe for new health videos every week, and I will see you in the next one. Take very good care of yourself.